You want the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
You can't handle the truth!
Well, we're giving you the Michigan Sports Truth, the show that is honest, reveals the facts, truth, and statistics, and does not mess around. Follow me, Taylor Phillips, on Twitter at DT2Phillips. Email me at TaylorGatorPhillips14@yahoo.com. Follow Ed Smith on Twitter at EdSmith313, and go to our website at MichiganSportsTruth.com. Also like our Facebook page, The Michigan Sports Truth on Spreaker, and join our group with the exact same name. The Michigan Sports Truth podcast is also available on iHeartRadio and SoundCloud. Also a subsidiary of Sports Radio Detroit, thus available on iTunes and Podbean. The views expressed by the host of this podcast are not opinion-based or for entertainment purposes. They are actually facts and truth, no matter if other people like it or not. It is the Michigan Sports Truth, and nothing can ever stop it from being correct.
Hey there, Michigan sports fanatics, and welcome to episode 233 of the Michigan Sports Truth on Spreaker, the weekend in review. I'm Taylor Phillips with my co-host Ed Smith. Thanks so much for being on here with me, Ed. How are you?
Well, I was feeling a little bit fine over the weekend, seeing a lot of things that go my way, specifically for my personal interests and whatnot. It wasn't quite too much of a toxic and stressful weekend. Then, unfortunately, we heard the news today from Avila regarding the Tigers, and it almost ruined my day. But we'll get to that later on in the show. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. But other than that, I'm feeling pretty fine. How about you, Taylor?
Oh, yeah, got plenty of college football to discuss, except Michigan had their bye week. But we're gonna go to the pros first and recap the Lions' 31-28 win over the Los Angeles Rams this past Sunday.
Touchdown, Detroit Lions!
It was a seesaw game before Matt Prater kicked in his game-winning 34-yard field goal with 1:29 left. And then the Lions came up with their second consecutive game-clinching interception this past Sunday with Raphael Bush, and the week before that, of course, with Darius Slay. Golden Tate with a game-tying touchdown. Their offense is starting to pick it up a little bit, but their defense is still stalling. First, the stats. Matthew Stafford, 23 of 31 completions for 270 yards and 4 touchdown passes. One of them to Anquan Boldin. Theo Riddick was out with an injury, but the Lions still came away with a win. Zach Zenner, 14 carries for 58 yards. Golden Tate, 8 receptions for 165 yards and a touchdown. Anquan Boldin, 8 carries for 60 yards and his touchdown. For LA, Case Keenum, 27 of 32 for 321 yards and 3 touchdown passes. Kenny Britt scored 2 touchdowns on 7 catches for 136. And Todd Gurley, 14 carries for 58 yards and no touchdowns. The Lions kept Todd Gurley off the board somehow, but their defense is still struggling.
Still struggling very much so. We got to point out, by the way, first and foremost, that they gave up yet another touchdown reception to another tight end. This time around it was Lance Jenkins for Los Angeles. I now lost count officially how many touchdowns now that the Lions defense has given to the tight ends over the past season and a half. Now we can call it that way. If you're a team with a tight end, with a good functioning tight end, you're always going to have a shot because that defense, it's already bad enough that you have to deal with injuries to Levy or and whoever else might be on that front seven. But the fact that they can't even cover a tight end to save their lives, it's truly very detrimental to them so far this year. But I will say, though, even despite all that, even despite the fact that it seemed like the defense was giving up points, it's giving up yards and chunks all day. For instance, Case Keenum had 19 straight completions without, to a multitude of receivers. So that was one reason why he went 27 and 32. But when it came down to when it mattered most, there was clutch when you needed clutch plays to happen. The defense came through on it. There was the 4th and goal where they stopped Gurley, who, by the way, looked like he was going on track to repeat his 100-yard plus performance against Detroit last year in Week 14. He seemed to be on that way early on to the game, but they stuffed him and held him, like you said, Taylor said, 57 yards total. And one of the reasons was, they was able to plug up the holes up the middle where to stop them getting to that second level. And it came real big handy on that 4th and goal with their goal. 4th and goal from about the 1 or so, stopped Gurley from getting the touchdown, which in essence would be the difference right there. Also the fact that the offense was able to convert on a 4th and goal from themselves. Stafford somehow, some way, running around, just throws up a literal prayer, and somehow Andre Robinson comes down with a catch. I don't know how the hell Stafford got that ball off, how he was able to get caught without getting picked off, and yet still Robinson was able to come through and complete the process, but still, it counts. It's a score, so you'll take and live with it. Before we get to Stafford, though, I will say again, back to the defense, yeah, they looked bad practically all day, but they made plays where it mattered the most. The 4th and goal stop, and of course the interception by Bush late in the game. So that's 2 straight weeks now where the defense has made multiple big plays to help keep the Lions in the game or win it right then and there. We saw what Slay did last week with the forced fumble that led to the field goal and then the interception that sealed it. This week we saw the stop at the goal line on 4th down, which prevented a touchdown, and then of course the interception. Again, then another late game interception to seal it. So defense does a long way to go. Ziggy Ansah came back. He played his first game today since week 2. Obviously, you can tell he's not looking quite the same as he was. He's still trying to shake that rust off. But him getting healthier, him getting better, working off that rust will allow that defensive line as a unit to perform much better. You're going to see Devin Taylor, who, by the way, forced the fumble, which, could have been another big play, but unfortunately he, or rather the defense, did not recover it. So that was another big play made by the defense. So again, the Ziggy effect, I think, will contribute to plays like that happening. Guys like Taylor, and of course, guys like Kerry Hyder, who almost seemed like a mere afterthought on the preseason route, during the preseason, has now made a huge contributing impact early on. You're going to see guys like that improve even more, knowing that Ziggy is back on the D line. As for the offense, I gotta say, Matthew Stafford once had a very, very, very good game once again this year. He has another game where they have QBR over 100 or so. That's except for maybe the Chicago game or something like that. He's been that way all year. So Stafford has been very, very consistent with his performances. And like you mentioned, the 23-31, that doesn't take into consideration the fact that Stafford, his receivers, once again, had the case of the Butterfingers. They dropped 4 passes, 3 on one drive, by the way. So this is a team that came into the game with about 40 or so drop passes, right behind St. Louis. So these are 2 of the most dropped teams with the case of the dropsies in the whole league, and the Lions added about 4 more to that total. So even still, knowing that you have that against you, and knowing that you were without your tight ends, Ebron didn't play due to an injury. You had to place Grant Glasgow from Michigan on the offensive line because Larry Warford was out. Put him at the left and move Blake and Thompson to right guard. You're also without Amir Abdullah practically for the year. Now you're without Theo Riddick, so you had to literally bring in guys off the street to help you. And Stafford found a way. He made plays. He made very little to no mistakes except for one play where was it, the 3rd and 7 or so, where, even Chris Fieldman pointed out, by the way, love his analysis, love his commentary. He's one of the best, but I digress. You mentioned about that Stafford, seeing how he has made moves, adjustments, and scrambling on the run this year, third downs or whatever the case may be. If he sees some green, he's going to use speed, use his legs, get the first down. I thought he had never good opportunity on that 3rd and 7 or so on Sunday, and instead of just running, he decided to trust his arm. Thought he saw Robinson open, threw across his body to the other side of the field, which probably wasn't a good idea to begin with. Almost got broken up, almost got picked off. That was probably if you could critique Stafford on anything, that was the one play that he didn't do a good job all day. Other than that, he was practically spotless, like I mentioned. 4 drop passes by his receivers. If it wasn't for that, he'd have an even higher QBR with more yards and possibly another touchdown or so. So, another terrific day from Stafford. And speaking of Stafford, though, how about Golden Tate? He looks absolutely tremendous. He seems he's getting back on par with what he was, what we've seen him so far, what we're used to seeing him here in Detroit as well as his whole career, primarily. He had 8 receptions, 165 yards and a touchdown. Probably could have had 2, but had not been for the fact that, upon replay, he was ruled down by contact after a mere incidental touch, by one of the defenders for St. Louis. So, it wasn't just the fact that he had the yards speak for himself, but it's also how he looked in the backfield, how he was getting involved, and how, because let's all face it, what happened against Chicago, that was practically rock bottom. The misdirection was Stafford losing his mind, cussing him out on the sideline. That was rock bottom. So I'm sure between him, Stafford, and maybe Caldwell, I guess we can use this now since Caldwell's such a man of God. We can use the whole they had to come to Jesus meeting, basically. That might have been what had happened. So, if it worked, hey, if it happened, I'm not going to blame him because it's working so far. He looks like his usual self, not just the fact that he had the catch, but also what else is he's known for? Being a yak machine, yards after catch, and he showed that in bunches this past Sunday. So, whatever conversation or intervention or whatever they had, it seemed to work for Tate, and you hope it continues to work going forward. By the way, quick mention, Zach Zenner, like you gave a brief mention to Zach Zenner, I got to give him another mention to him here because in the preseason I thought he looked damn good. Thought he more than earned a spot on the roster, and hey, he proved his work on Sunday. The yards don't say sexy, but the way he runs and how he just seemed to get crucial spots, crucial gains on where you need to milk the clock or get into a manageable third down, where you had to get keep your defense off the field because they were getting lit up by St. Louis at the time. You needed a productive drive in your offense, and sometimes getting those runs from Zenner helped along the way. So never good job, or a good job by Zach Zenner, seeing how he had to step up with the injury to Theo Riddick, and especially knowing that Justin Forsett, he literally just signed with the team last week. He's not going to get used to play calls and scheme and how they work and all that. So it was up to Zenner to be that feature back, and he proved his work and then some on Sunday.
That's true. Which totals up to total yards. The LA Rams 387 and the Lions 348. Very close margin. The only turnover was that game-sealing interception thrown by Case Keenum. Penalties, not too shabby. The Rams committed 8 for 62 yards. The Lions committed 7 for 62 yards. I just went to ESPN.com while you were talking, and the stats read exactly right. Both Zach Zenner and Todd Gurley cashed in with 14 carries and 58 yards, but no touchdowns. What do you know? But anyway, with that, the Lions have won 2 straight now, and their homestand seems to help them out, and they got one more game in their 3-game homestand, and their next game is home against the Washington Redskins. Kirk Cousins, a player to watch, but we'll preview that this Thursday on the Football in the Mitten preview.
Mm-hmm. Well, I will state, though, it could be a potential crucial / swing game in terms of how their overall record will finish out. Because, if they win that game, now they're 4-3. And then the next game, going on the road, they're facing Houston. Houston doesn't exactly look like a world beater, especially now that J.J. Watt is out. I believe he is done for the year with that back injury. So these are 2 winnable games. Let's say they go out and win them. Now they're 5-3. Now, even though some armies probably would not like that because they're thinking, oh, God, we got to lose. We got to get Caldwell fired. But, a part of me is thinking, as long as some guys look productive, don't look like a complete albatross, don't look like complete total puke garbage out there, okay? So there's a little bit of conflict of interest here. But the way things are shaping up, again, it's proving my point of how I think this team could wind up being an 8-8 team, like I told you before. But if they get to 5-3, you know, that cynicism will slow down just a little bit because, you know, but not too much because then they got to play Minnesota the next week. And I think we all know that's not going to be a win, especially how Minnesota's been playing. But, again, two very winnable games in my view coming up. And if, you know, say what happens here, they could potentially put themselves in a fine position for this second half. And a lot of people thought wasn't possible after the 1-3 start.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That's quite the that's true, and we'll just have to see what happens when the Lions go on the road after their homestand finale against those Skins. That's again the football mitten in the preview. Football in the Mitten preview coming up this Thursday at midnight. Got some college football to go over as well. We'll have to start with the Michigan State Spartans, I'm afraid.
Touchdown, MSU!
Yeah. And wouldn't you know it, they pull out another loss out of the jaws of victory, 54-40 to the Northwestern Wildcats at Spartan Stadium in East Lansing. On homecoming, the Spartans jumped out to a 14-0 lead with touchdowns from Josiah Price and Justin Lane on a 43-yard pick six and led 17-7 just 45 seconds into the second quarter after a Michael Geiger 41-yard field goal. But then the Cats scored 26 unanswered points, including a safety to lead 33-17 with 6:49 to go in the third quarter. They led 19-17 at halftime. MSU scored two R.J. Shelton touchdowns to cut NW's lead to 33-31 with 2:08 left. I thought they should have gone for two to tie it up at 33 to give them a little extra momentum, but it was 33-31 from there. But Northwestern scored two more, the first of them on a 95-yard kickoff return by Solomon Vaught with a minute and 53 left in that third quarter.
Oh, man!
To re-stretch their lead back to 47-31 before it became a seesaw until the end, and the Wildcats came up with a 54-40 win on Michigan State's homecoming day. Statistics show total yards 490 total yards for Northwestern and 475 for MSU. Very offensive game all along, but two turnovers for the Spartans and one for the Northwestern Wildcats. The Wildcats in that second quarter let's see. In that second quarter, came up with a safety before they took the lead on that field goal at halftime, 19-17. That's got to be one of the lowest points in Spartan football history under the Mark D'Antonio era.
It's damn near close to the bottom. I think the only thing lower than that were the two ass whoopings from Alabama. But other than that, it's pretty damn low. First and foremost, this is the first time that Michigan State had 50 or more points dropped on them in about 21 years. That's when Nick Saban was starting his first year as head coach. And I believe this is the first time ever in school history that they gave up 50 or more points at home. So yikes, and more yikes. But there was a big stat here that really told the tale, essentially what's the difference here. Third downs. MSU 5 for 16. Northwestern 10 of 19. Seemed like whenever the defense needed to play, needed to do something, needed to get stopped, they could not get off the fucking field. And Northwestern was able to make them pay for that. But as you can see right there, that's one reason why They got 54 points total because they couldn't be, the defense couldn't get them off the field on third downs. Not to mention the fact that they completely obliterated MSU in the rushing category. Essentially ran it down their throats and up their asses, basically. 51 carries by their multitude of backs, about 200 yards collectively, whereas MSU can only garner up a mere pathetic 51 yards on 2.2 yards per carry. This is a team. What was the identity of Mark D'Antonio's team in the past? Great defense, strong running game. None of that. None of that was absolutely present there. Not to mention the fact that you have no fucking idea who or what your quarterback situation is looking at right now. Lewerke, you thought, let's turn to him. Then he gets shellacked. So now what? You bring in O'Connor again, which, by the way, disrespectful to Damian Terry. You would have thought, wasn't the depth chart read that Lewerke was the first starter, then Terry was the backup, and then O'Connor was the third string. So you go from your first string straight to your third string without giving Terry a chance, a shot, give him something here. That was disrespectful in my view, because I think, granted, Terry, he might not have that strong of an arm, but I think he gives you far better of a chance to make plays with his legs than what O'Connor or even Lewerke can provide for you. Give you something of substance in that from that quarterback spot that can help trigger something, give you some type of hope or whatever. O'Connor, someone said, "Oh, he looked good. He threw a couple of good picks, threw a couple of good touchdowns." Let's look at the fact that one of those touchdowns there through the shelter probably should have been a pick. It was a 50-50 ball, as you can, as light as day, which was kept around. And, if you're going to play the what-if game, you probably should have had 2 picks on that day instead of 1. So, far from impressed by O'Connor. What else can you say? What else can you explain what has happened to this team? You knew for a fact that losing the talent that they had from last year, it was going to hurt them at least a little bit. But I don't think any of us were thinking, like, oh, God, they may not win 6 games. They might not even get to a bowl. None of us here were thinking that. We're thinking, okay, now 8, 9 wins. If they go unlucky, probably get the 7-5, but still they'll go to a bowl game, a respectable bowl game. Now we're not so sure what the hell they're going to do here. And this is obviously on the coordinators, both offense and defense. The defense has gotten progressively worse week after week after week after week. The offense has been flat out mess the whole year. Dave Warner, he has got to go. I'm not an MSU fan, but even I know, for the sake of everyone's sanity, Dave Warner cannot be brought back after this season. He just can't. Otherwise, it's turning in what we saw, the buddy system under John L. Smith. I'm sure was again dark days for Spartan fans. So, and this falls on Mark D'Antonio. He's the head coach here. He's the guy who tried to stick with O'Connor week after week when it clearly wasn't working. And he's got to have some accountability for this. I'm not saying, fire D'Antonio, but no, because he's brought himself much, much good leeway with the job he has done in this decade. I commend him for it, but still, there comes some points of times where you, as the head coach, you need some accountability. You need to take responsibility for your choices and how you conduct your team. And sticking with O'Connor and giving Dave Warner chance after chance and seeing how that defense, Mark D'Antonio, the defensive coach, he's got to do something with it. It means taking away play calling duties from the coordinator and try to find a new guy at the end of the year or whatever the case. And again, I would recommend fire Dave Warner at the end of the year. If it were me, he'd probably be gone yesterday, but that's just me. So they got to find whatever they can to salvage their season, because I hate to be that prick to remind you, but you do have Michigan coming in 2 weeks. They're coming to East Lansing, and they're coming with revenge on their mind and hate in their heart. So you need to be as ready as you possibly can be for the possible bloodletting that could be happening in 2 weeks. So it's very imperative that you do as good a job you can do against someone. But again, we'll get to that on the Thursday show. But I'll just say this: MSU wants to have, make sure the season is a complete misery, because you know what's coming up with Michigan, and for that matter, Ohio State on the schedule. Get it done and beat Maryland this Saturday night. I'll just say that.
Definitely. I think Michigan State is in deep trouble, dire straits, in a deep sludge. they just they're just not developing this year under this roster without Connor Cook and others, and that's a problem for Mark D'Antonio, and I mostly blame that on the players, but if it doesn't, but next year if it still doesn't develop, then I'm going to start blaming it on the coaches. And
well, I have to. If you don't want to blame D'Antonio, fine, but I think the offensive coordinator deserves some culpability, at least for this. Especially the defense coordinator for that performance that we saw on Saturday. 54 fucking points at home to a Northwestern team that against Illinois State scored 7. They scored 7 against Illinois State, yet they come to your crib and drop a 50 burger on you. That's embarrassing and beyond pathetic.
Oh, man. well, wouldn't you know it? The Spartans under Connor Cook and Kirk Cousins used to be so great that they won 3 Big Ten championships, and now they come back down to this. Seriously. They're 2-4 overall, and they're 0-3 in the Big Ten. Seems like every time this year the Spartans play a conference game, they shoot themselves in the foot and find a way to lose. Plus they got rocked by the BYU Cougars 31-14 at home the week before, and that's just one of those big highlights that the Spartans at their entirety are just not good at all.
No, they're not. I mean, I think we would have had the confirmation from this. The first red flag was the Furman game. You know how dreadful they look. Yeah, they won by 15 points, but they looked absolutely slow, sluggish, and just flat out not that good. Then, you thought, oh, maybe they fooled us with the Notre Dame performance. Then we see how bad Notre Dame has gotten this year. And then you got your asses whipped by Wisconsin. Then you lose in overtime to Indiana. Granted, I'm not going to credit them for that because Indiana's looking like a strong team this year. They're going to give you some scares like that. There's a reason why I'm actually, not too confident, well, not 100% confident that Michigan's going to win. I still think they can, but it's just not. They got to watch themselves on that. But still, then to lose to that, then the BYU, and now this 3 straight losses at home. By the way, at home, and all of them you lost by double digits. That's not just sad. That's frightening.
Oh man, that's like embarrassing. Yeah.
And your next home game, you got Michigan. So, woo.
Yep. And speaking of Michigan, why don't we get to them right now before we get to the Mid-American Conference?
Some positive news out the way for once. I'm sorry, Spartan fans. I know seems like I'm getting great joy and glee out of this, but trust me, it's if I was a fan, I would be disgusted. So I'm just only going to this perspective. If this was my team, I'd be completely outraged.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, just a couple quick headlines here. CBS Sports makes a case that cornerback and linebacker Jabrill Peppers should win the Heisman Trophy. Primarily, he's a defensive player, but now his offense, he's racking up a lot of numbers on offense as well, and on special teams, including a touchdown on a kickoff return at home. But last week we discussed his possibility of winning the Heisman Trophy, but now CBS Sports has picked up on it. What say you on that?
Again, it's a good thing that A, he plays at Michigan, which is going to attract media attention anyway, and B, his head coach is Jim Harbaugh, who, if Jim Harbaugh says this kid is going to win the Heisman, then alone will get attention to possible voters on your side. Now granted, Peppers has done a fine job himself. Okay, he has played officially at 13 different positions this year alone so far.
Yep.
He was like one of the leading tacklers on the team, especially tackles for loss. Obviously, the most dangerous person in the special teams department. He probably could have had another touchdown on his resume if it not been for the penalty during the Rutgers game. So, and also the fact that he showcases speed not just in the return game but also on offense. That 63-yard scamper to set up the tie as a touchdown was a thing of beauty. Almost gave me flashbacks to 2010 Denard Robinson. But I digress. He has great talent. Very good defensive player, great speed, can work in any scenario, offense, defense, special teams. And in a way, when you pay so much attention to him, you almost forget the fact that, there's a guy by the name of Jordan Lewis, who might argue, in my opinion, the best cornerback in all college football. You have a monstrous defensive line. You have a flat-out terrific secondary that, by the way, had already lost a senior, Jeremy Clark, to injury, but yet you're still this damn good. So, again, if his team, I'm saying, hey, keep all that attention on you, so that way, when we blitz them, we can surprise everyone. Holy shit. So, this, trust me, if it wasn't for the fact that, Peppers is in a very loaded field, like I gave you before, Lamar Jackson, Deshaun Watson, J.T. Barrett, those three guys, the way they keep playing, they're going to be the three that head to New York. Now, if they're going to expand the field and say, hey, let's bring in four, then maybe you could say Peppers can have that outside shot. He'd probably be that wild card, that dark horse, however you want to phrase it. But if he does a few more things, let's just say this. I think let me make this a fair comparison, because I think I heard this on the Out of Bounds live video show from our affiliates at Sports Radio Detroit. They mentioned, in terms of comparison between Charles Woodson and Jabrill Peppers, Woodson was the better pure defensive player, whereas Peppers seems to be he's the better pure offensive player. If you get my drift.
Mm-hmm.
So, but again, that's not a knock or a shot at Peppers. So if he finds himself in New York, that would be great. But now here's the thing: what happens next year? Because most of that secondary, this is their last year. They're going to graduate, go to the NFL. Jordan Lewis, for sure, he's going to be playing on Sundays. So let's say Peppers doesn't want to be seen, doesn't want to be the sole guy that everybody wants to pay attention to on the defense. Let's say if he doesn't want to stay, because I think he's going to go. He could go eligible to go to the NFL. If not, he'll probably. But if not, if that's not the case. Hey, if he stays one more year at the very least, fine, perfect, by all means. And in fact, if anything, that could guarantee him a better spot, better his chances, rather, I should say, to get into one of the final three and maybe win the Heisman next year. But the way Michigan they're going, they keep winning games, they stay undefeated. They get to Ohio State, beat them. Media influence, the Harbaugh factor, and the fact that if Peppers has a couple, highlight memorable Heisman moments, quote unquote, during some of the big games coming up at MSU, hard time on the road at night against Iowa, and of course, end of the year at Ohio State. Sure, that could sway voters, because if there's anything you can point out, what do you remember most about recent and also famous Heisman winners? The moments they created. Flutie had the Hail Mary. Johnny Manziel had his play against Alabama. Robert Griffin III had his game against Oklahoma. It takes those type of things. Of course, Reggie Bush, what he did against Arkansas, even though the NCAA will probably refuse to acknowledge his existence, but still, those type of moments. So if Peppers can create those kind of moments in the games coming up, MSU, Iowa, Ohio State, you know what? That could be that 11th-hour late swing that could garner some votes his way. But again, we'll have to see what happens.
The second article that we wanted to break to you guys today is, according to Jim Harbaugh via the Free Press, running back Drake Johnson is ready to play this Saturday on homecoming at home at Michigan Stadium, the Big House in Ann Arbor, against the 2-4 Illinois Fighting Illini. The Illini are another easy opponent. The Michigan Wolverines are now third ranked in the AP poll, and spoiler alert for the football and the Mitten preview, but Michigan is going to shell Illinois almost the same way they did to Rutgers, about the same way they did this to Central Florida, and so on.
Yeah, I won't go too much into detail, but I'll just say this defense, they're going to set the tone. They're going to set the table, to say the least. But back to anyway, like you mentioned to Drake Johnson, very nice to hear. Very nice to hear him say, because this is his senior year. I doubt he'll get a gray shirt. I think his chances are lower getting a 6-year eligibility compared to what Jeremy Clark might get for next year. But that's another topic for another day. But it's good to see that he could get some play this week, because he's gone through a lot. He has battled a lot, not just this year, but this whole career at Michigan. He's had multiple, as in plural, more than one ACL tear. And again, those aren't pretty to come back from. And he's had 2 of them within a span of 4 years. And yet he still wants to keep coming back and wanting to play. That's commendable and admirable on his part. But let's mention, let's go off the field. The guy got run over by a fucking forklift this past off season. A forklift. Okay? The guy should be dead right now. But the fact that he's not, and he's going through all this, and he's coming back to play. Again, like I said, commendable, and hats off, respect, and props to him. So the fact that he's still going through all that, still wants to come back, still wants to play at the least, finish out this season, close out his senior year on a high note as best as he can. My hats off to him, and then, you know what? I hope he does well. And it could prove to be, again, another additional asset, because Michigan seems absolutely loaded with the running back position right now. Devion Smith, Ty Isaac, Karan Higdon, and now you're adding in, not to mention the little, jet sweeps that you do, or, the open field plays that you do with Chris Evans or Eddie McDoom or even Chesson or Darbo on jet sweeps. So now you're adding in Johnson back into the mix. Again, another viable weapon that could help you out with your offense and take less pressure off of Wilson Speight, which is what you want to have happen for you all year long. Now, granted, like I mentioned before, some days, some plays, some games, Spade's going to have to make the big play to help his team win. Now, obviously, he did that against Wisconsin. Can he do it against Michigan State? Can he do it against Iowa? Can he do it against Ohio State? Can he do it potentially in the Big Ten title game? We have to see. But the less pressure taken off him by his defense, his running game will help make his job a lot easier to perform.
Definitely, yeah. Drake Johnson, one tough guy. Survived the forklift incident. Well, I think it's time for me to recap my Chippewas here.
Touchdown, Central Michigan!
They won 34-28. They won 34-28 in triple overtime over the Northern Illinois Huskies in DeKalb, Illinois. My Chips scored first with an 11-yard touchdown reception by Trevor Thomas from Cooper Rush. With 8:38 until halftime, there was no scoring in the first quarter. NIU tied it back up. CMU went ahead, and NIU retied it, and CMU went back ahead, and so on. And with 16 seconds left in the fourth quarter, Brian Evie blew what would have been a game-winning 33-yard field goal, so the game would stay tied at 21 going into overtime.
He freaking sucks.
And then he missed a 35-yard field goal kick in the first overtime.
He freaking sucks.
Damn it!
And then Corey Willis in the second overtime would score first for the Chippewas with a 25-yard touchdown reception in just one play. But Joe Boagnon would tie it back up at 28 with a 13-yard touchdown catch from Anthony Mantha, forcing a triple overtime period. Northern Illinois would fail to score as Christian Hagan missed a 34-yard field goal kick, giving the Chips a chance to win, which they did as Rush would find Tyler Conklin in just one play for a 25-yard touchdown catch to make it the final 34-28 in 3 overtimes.
I love it!
Central Michigan improves to 5-2 and 2-1 in the Mid-American Conference, and Northern Illinois falls to 1-6. And 1-2 in the MAC. Total yards: 484 for CMU, 339 for NIU. 3 turnovers by the Chippewas. Two of them interception throws by Cooper Rush, and 2 turnovers committed by NIU. 4 penalties by CMU for 50 yards, 3 by NIU for 26 yards. Cooper Rush, a bit of a shabby night. No offense, but a little shabby. 19 of 35 for 254 yards. That's not a bad total, but 3 touchdowns too, but 2 interceptions, as I mentioned before. Got to cut down on those. Anthony Mantha for the Huskies, 18 of 30 for 165 yards, 3 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. Central's Devin Spalding, 22 carries for 124 yards and a touchdown. Jabrill Hayes, 22 carries for 105 yards and a touchdown. Not much in the receiving department. Everyone on both teams came up with up to 70 yards receiving. One thing I'd like to see the Chippewas change in the roster is a new kicker. Brian Evie sucks as a kicker, as a field goal kicker. He's perfect at extra points, but he's missed at least quite a few field goal kicks, and that's detrimental. I mean, 7 is better than 3, but the Brian Evie is bad at field goal kicking. It's detrimental. He had a chance to win it with a field goal from 33 yards out with 16 minutes left. Then the Chippewas would not have gone into overtime. They would have lost in overtime as well. Even though Northern Illinois is 1-6, John Bonamigo said before the game, the head coach, Coach Bono, said that it was going to be a trap, meaning the Chippewas have to be prepared for what could be a trap. Just like in Virginia, when they lost 49-35. They fell behind 28-0, came back to tie it at 28, but then they lost 49-35. They fell apart in the end. But Brian Evie has got to go. The Chips need a new kicker. Use their backup kicker. I don't care. But Brian Evie sucks. Give their backup kicker a chance. CMU goes on the road to Toledo and play the Rockets Saturday at noon. By the way, MSU is at Maryland Saturday at 7:30 on BTN, the Terrapins. The Western Michigan Broncos back to the MAC here. They went into Akron and shelled the Zips 41-0. They were 24th ranked before that, and now they are ranked 20th.
Oh, man!
Eastern season continues for the Broncos.
Yeah.
Dream season continues for them. Roll the boat.
Yeah. Eastern Michigan Eagles. They win a close one, 27-20 over the Ohio Bobcats in Athens, Ohio. So that's it for the MAC. So that
Before we exit football, just want to make a brief mention. The new AP poll that was released on Sunday has Michigan now at number 3 in the country. So they jumped.
Yeah, I already mentioned
Clemson.
that.
Oh, I wasn't paying attention, but I was going to mention the fact that, due to the fact that Clemson had quite a scare against, of all teams, North Carolina State. You probably argued that they should have lost that game because the kicker, had a dead-on, I would call it chip shot from about, 26-something yards out, and then he flat-out fucking missed it wide right at the end of regulation. So, in all intents and purposes, Clemson should have a loss in their record. But, hey, they got it done. They took advantage of it, got the win in OT. But, I think the AP got it right, not rewarding them. And even though, yes, Michigan was on the bye week, but let's face it, last game they played, they didn't need to need a field, depend on a kicker missing a field goal. They went out and destroyed their opponent. Most likely what they'll do again this Saturday, validating that the AP choice. So, it makes that impending Michigan-Ohio State collision course look even more juicy week after week after week. So keep an eye on that for sure. Especially now the fact that Clemson, the way they keep playing, if they lose, mind you, if they lose, it could open up the door for the potential loser of that game, be it Michigan or Ohio State, maybe backdoor themselves into the Final Four, into that fourth spot. Now, granted, still a lot of other things have to happen, but the way things are going, a loss by either team in that game wouldn't be the end of the world because a lot of crazy stuff could still happen. It's college football after all.
Michigan will take it. And now we switch to a different sport, and we tune to hockey. The Red Wings, after losing 6-4 to Tampa Bay to open their season at Amalie Arena, they go into Sunrise at BB&T Center and fall flat 4-1 to the Panthers. Darren Helm scored the only goal. Ed, you've watched the highlights on that one before this podcast. The Panthers made an early statement. The Red Wings just weren't ready, and it proves through the first two games that they're not ready to win on the road, and they just don't have the chemistry on this roster.
No, exactly not. I mean, again, the thing that we've been pointing out now, their defense looks brutal. It looks even more brutal against Florida. The breakaways and the open space that they seemed like they didn't protect Mrazek as well. And as the stats may fool you, I'm surprised it didn't. It wasn't 5 or 6-1 like we saw. Like we saw the upper day, except in reverse. So Mrazek is only one player. Now, granted, he can still improve on his mind, but still, I'm not putting all this on him. His defense is total shit. He can't do anything. He turned the puck over, hanging him out to dry, essentially. What else can a goalie do here? Okay, this isn't, and all due respect to him, he's not Marty Brodeur. But I'm sure even Brodeur couldn't be able to withstand doing this. Playing by such a horrible defensive team such as this.
Yeah, and turning the puck over is just what you can't do. It's almost as if he kept pulling a Jimmy Howard in that game.
When they're current right now, they're ranking in the NHL in terms of goals against. I believe that's goals that's given up. That's 3.7, ranked 21st in the league. So you've given up an average of almost 4 a game to start the year, and your defense is in the bottom tier, essentially. That you're ranked at the bottom tier, so that's an indictment on your defense. Another indictment on your defense, I should say.
That's true. You got it. But then Mrazek shined when the Red Wings returned home to play their final home opener at Joe Louis Arena. They beat the Ottawa Senators 5-1. The Senators were 2-0 going into that one. The Red Wings were 0-2 coming into it, and the Red Wings got off to a very hot start. They led 3-0 after 1, and 3-1 after 2, and then they put the icing on the cake on that one, scoring 2 goals in that third period. Mike Green scored a hat trick of all people, and Darren Helm added 2 more to total up to 3 on the year, and Thomas Vanek 3 assists, and Mrazek made 31 saves out of 32 shots. Much better performance from him. on a night where the Red Wings were honoring Gordie Howe.
Mm-hmm.
And just a much better performance.
Yeah, I would say that was due in part to the fact that the crowd was giving them some juice. Because remember, this is the final home opener at the Joe, so I think emotions were high. And the fact, like I said, and the additional paying tribute to Gordie Howe, all that was coming up to the bed. I think the fans gave them that type of energy to help them out with that aspect just a little bit. Like you mentioned, Darren Helm, 2 goals that he scored. Now he's got 3 of the year already. Good start offensively for Helmer. I may not like his defense, but at least he's showing me something with his offense so far. Showcased some good speed, that vintage speed that I remember him seeing back in 2009. Showcased it on that breakaway. Speaking of breakaways, though, there's one thing that just grinds my gears. It's that it seems that the Red Wings they don't know exactly how to cover a 2-on-1 breakaway. It's like the third or fourth time this year I've seen a goal scored on them. When the opposing team has a breakaway advantage, either if it's sliding to a guy or being slow to a guy. It's like whenever you can almost pretty much turn your head because you know how it's going to end. Whenever you see a breakaway, like here comes a goal, and when you turn back your head, they're celebrating because the point's been added. So shit. So there you go. Another aspect of why their defense is horrible at the moment.
That was a shorthanded goal by Ottawa. Riley Sheahan let them steal it from him on the power play.
Ugh.
Sheahan should not be on the power play at all. He stinks on the power play. And that led to a 2-on-1 odd man rush. Brendan Smith back on defense. I saw the breakaway at its entirety. Smith laid down to try to play some defense, but the Senators were patient. They deked around and they put one past Mrazek top shelf glove side to get themselves on the board.
Yeah, period by Smith, but especially not a good slide.
No, you can't. You can lay down, but you can't slide.
Right.
I actually can believe I'm saying this because it's more complicated. So, the Red Wings go back on the road to New York, Madison Square Garden, against the New York Rangers Wednesday at 8. That's tomorrow, or later tonight, at 8 o'clock on NBCSN's Wednesday Night Rivalry. Then on Friday, they're home against the Nashville Predators at 7:30 on FSD, Fox Sports Detroit. And then on Saturday at 7 on FSD, they welcome in the San Jose Sharks. And then on Tuesday at 7:30 on FSD, the Carolina Hurricanes come blowing into town. And then next week, Thursday, they're in St. Louis against the Blues at 8 on FSD.
They have got to be really, really, really careful with that Rangers game because I don't know if you noticed, Taylor, in their first 2 games, the Rangers have scored a total of 12 goals. Now, granted, it's the first 2 games of the season, but still. Yeah, but still, in the first 2 games, you average, 6 goals a game? It's, oh, God. So, knowing how bad this is and seeing how the damage that the Rangers have done so far, add in the fact that it's on their ice at MSG, I'd be squeamish, essentially, if I was a fan going to that game, because it could be ugly. And it's on national TV, too. Oh, God help us.
Oh, yeah. Ken Holland has got to be embarrassed. And remember, we want him fired because Ken Holland just continues to destroy the farm system. And we're gonna show you an example of why that is. The Grand Rapids Griffins, as I recap the Grand Rapids Griffins, they won 4-2 at home, 3-1 on the road over the Chicago Wolves. The home and home set to open their season. First game at Van Andel Arena, second game in Chicago. Then they win earlier tonight earlier tonight or Tuesday night in Iowa, 4-3. They come back from down 3-1. Anthony Mantha scored a hat trick in Iowa, totaling up to 5 goals in his first 3 games of the season. And I heard from Grand Rapids Griffins play-by-play announcer Bob Kaiser on Wood Radio on iHeartRadio, 1300 AM in Grand Rapids and 106.9 FM in Muskegon, that he's sure the Red Wings are paying very close attention. Well, we're going to have to hope so here, because Steve Ott of the Wings ain't doing jack shit, and Anthony Mantha is already racking up the numbers here, especially goals. Mind you, 5 goals, three of them in Iowa, just a few hours before we went on the air.
Oh, and if it makes everybody else feel better, Timu Pulkkinen scored a goal from Minnesota tonight.
Yeah, he chipped it in
Baron Hossa got his 500th career goal.
Yeah, and Hossa, 500th career goal in Chicago. Yeah. The Wings should not have let him go after 2009.
If anybody feels that dagger, that knife sticking further into their eye, I just help place it in a little bit deeper. So, thanks, Ken Holland.
Thanks for nothing. Suck it, Ken Holland. Also, Mitch Callahan, 2 goals in the season opener at Van Andel Arena, and then in Chicago last Saturday, Evgeny Svechnikov, the Red Wings' first-round 20th overall draft pick, scored his first career professional AHL goal to help the Griffins to a 4-2 win over the Wolves. Their upcoming schedule is Friday at home against the Rockford Ice Hogs, affiliated by the Blackhawks, and Saturday home against the Lake Erie Monsters. Both games at 7 on News Radio Wood 1300 in Grand Rapids and 106.9 FM in Muskegon. Now the Pistons preseason.
Left sideline 3 and he answers.
They win 3 straight. They went into Atlanta and came back to win 99-94 last Friday over the Hawks. Then they went to Philadelphia and dominated the 76ers at Wachovia Center, 97-76. Then they went back home to the Palace and came back from over 10 down in the second quarter to whomp on the Milwaukee Bucks, 102-78. In Friday's game, Aaron Baines, of all people, scored 16 points. As bad as he is really as terrible as he is defensively, he sure sometimes he racks up points like he did in Atlanta. 16 points of all statistics.
Oh, man!
Yeah, but then he had a coming down to earth essentially against Milwaukee. He went 1 of 6, only had 2 points. Did get 4 rebounds, but not much of a factor. I think that 16 points that he gets on was probably an anomaly. I think we're going to see more consistent performances offensively, I guess, from Baines. No, he won't be getting 2 every time he plays, but generally won't be getting 16 either. As long as you give you good rebounds and doesn't be as bad defensively as he was last year, I'm fine with him being on space. It's a body, it's depth. You made with what you got. I was impressed though by what I saw. Not just from Davis Caldwell-Pope, who had himself 6 threes in the game, which helped him out with his 23-point output. But also Henry Ellenson, the rookie from Marquette. He had 14 on 5 of 8 shooting, including being perfect from downtown with 3 threes. And again, another good off-season move, Boban Marjanovic. What else can you say? He's a big beast in more ways than one. So he came through. He had 8 points on 2-2 from the field. His paint presence, and also making 4 free throws. And on the topic of free throws, Andre Drummond went 2 for 2. So it was a bit of a perfect night, as you can call it.
Oh, yeah. Just about almost everything seemed to be going the Pistons' way through that stretch, through that 3-game winning streak. There's still room for improvement on other areas, but the Pistons.
Case what they did against Milwaukee, having have a good advantage to the 3-point percentage department. Obviously, have advantage in the paint with rebounds and whatnot. But also take a look at this, for instance, fast break points. They outscored Milwaukee 21-5 in the fast break points stat total. So that's another thing that could help them out here. So if they just limit the turnovers, because they only had one fewer than Milwaukee, 14 is pretty damn high if you ask me. Lower that, and of course work on the issue that is drawing street foes. That this could be a recipe of what could help this team essentially break out this year.
That's true. So the Pistons wrap up their preseason at home against the Toronto Raptors Wednesday at 7:30. You can only hear it on 105.1 The Bounce, WMGC-FM, or on its mobile app. Download that on the App Store or on Google Play, or online on your PC or Mac or laptop at 1051thebounce.com. Then they open their season against the Raptors next Wednesday, I think. But anyway, that's all we got for the Pistons. Now it's time to get down to some Tigers business here.
That one is long gone.
Tigers general manager Avila quoted, "Changes are coming," according to headlines here. He was mentioning Francisco Rodriguez and Cameron Maven. He listed them off. I heard on the DSR podcast with Jeff Moss. Follow him on Twitter at Jeff Moss DSR. If they release him, they must pay $8 million. If they keep him, they must pay him $9 million. But that's they're kind of, but they're kind of they're really close to the same thing if you think about it. But still, $9 million is greater than $8 million. Then according to that article from thescore.com, Mark Lowe, Mike Pelfrey, and Anthony Gose each won a spot on the roster, and Avila said he doesn't know what he wants to do, but he doesn't want to rebuild. And then Anthony Fennick of the Detroit Free Press, one of the dumbest beat writers in town, suggested for the Tigers to bring back Alex Avila.
Ah, shut up, you idiot! What? Oh.
Just like Lynn Henning suggested about a week or two ago.
That might not be too much of a bad idea, because, like I said, seeing how Salta Lamakia performed for most of the year, and most likely you're not bringing them back next year. What do you got to lose, essentially?
Yeah, there have got to be other options out there besides Alex Avila. I know Jared Saltalamacchia should not come back, but Alex Avila offensively still isn't producing much. Granted, he's a defensive catcher, but the Tigers need more offense from their catchers, especially James McCann and whichever other Tigers catcher that they had, whether it be Alex Avila or Jared Saltalamacchia, neither of them have produced much. So the Tigers have got to do something.
Yeah, they got to do something. In fact, anything, all around, it does not look like a good fortuitous tale of the future. Because if you read between the lines, see through the smoke and the mirrors and the bullshit, Avila was essentially saying he probably didn't want to come outright and say it because he didn't want to piss off any of the fans. But let's say what it is. He's getting orders. He won't say it, but he's getting orders from Chris Ilitch. We're going to trend the payroll. We're probably going to have to trade a couple of players. Or probably, essentially essentially it's what Chris Ilitch did in helping ensure that the Doug Fisher trade went off times 10. Maybe times 50 by the time, it's all said and done here. So when Avila says we're going to get, younger and leaner, essentially that means we're going to trim the payroll. Let's read between the lines on that. So if you think about who's eligible to be on the short list of guys that either won't be brought back or could be traded to free up cap room, I hate to say it, but you're looking at guys like J.D. Martinez for one. You're maybe looking at Cameron Maben, seeing how well he performed this year, whether you pick up that option or not. And I dread saying this, but you can't, there's always that outside possibility of, if we get a whole lot in return, who's to say they won't put Verlander up on the block, or even Miggy. That's always a possibility when you enter, because come on. If Chris Ellis made sure that Doug Fister was traded, you think that's going to stop him from trading away Miggy or JB?
Now that you mentioned Chris Ilitch, Jeff Moss just published his latest article. Hey, Chris Ilitch, sell the Tigers, and that on DetroitSportsRag.com, and that's going to tell you everything about why Chris Ilitch should sell the Tigers.
Yeah, because essentially it's, if you want to get on because I think it's safe to say the era that you had through with Miggy, JV, Victor, even guys like Scherzer and Price, in terms of trying to get to the series, it's safe to say that window's officially closed now. When you hear talk from your manager, from your general manager saying, we got to go through this, we got to avoid the luxury tax, and we've been overspending for some time. We're trying to get above that out. Even though this just passed off season, you spent money on Jordan Zimmerman and Justin Upton and Cameron Maben, but I digress. So, oh God, it's just not been a good. I told you this was not going to be a good day for me because hearing this news, and because let's combine the fact that the Tigers more likely will be cutting the payroll. Let's also combine the fact that the Red Wings seem to be a stubborn and slowly riding train wreck that even the most gullible fans can't seem to realize yet, so it's going to hit them right in the fucking face. That's a very good analogy I could use to describe another thing for another topic for another day. But there's that. The Lions, they continue to be infuriating and inept all at once. I like some of the players. I do not like their head coach. I do not like their ownership. So we're essentially, if this is where Inception, we'll be way deep in limbo right now. So, and while I see hope, I do see promise for the Pistons in terms of right now, they're not ready to compete for a title. Okay, not with the likes of Cleveland and Golden State and San Antonio and Toronto and even Boston, for instance. The additions they made in the offseason. The most that the Pistons can hope for at this current day is to try and get to the second round of playoffs and win a game, depending on their matchup. So while I do see open promise, the full, evolution or whatever the case may be, their full potential won't be realized until at least another 2 or maybe 3 years down the road, at least. And then, so you factor all that together, I'll just say this. Thank God that my Wolverines are competing for a national title this year. Otherwise, I'd be losing my sanity right now. In fact, I practically am, and the only thing that's keeping that little sliver of sanity uncut is the fact that Michigan's done so well this year.
I agree. Keep in mind, Jeff Moss said on the DSR podcast that the Tigers might lose $25 million in payroll. That's what we meant by cutting the payroll, and this is why this could lead to the Tigers missing the playoffs by further than one game.
But still, if the Illiches are worried about that, that's a little horseshit because A, they're billionaires. Two, if they're worried about that, and some numbers crunched up and presented the Moss, you compare that to somebody that's making $65,000 a year, it's about a loss of $280. So that's what, losing $25 million is the Illiches, essentially. If you have their money, that would be like losing $280. So really, you're going to go to a panic financial tailspin and try to cut and trim spending because of that? Meanwhile, you're already putting $2 billion into downtown for the district. So explain that to me.
Yeah, and explain why you didn't hire enough Detroit workers on the rest of your new Little Caesars arena, like we talked about last week on our last episode.
Worried about $225 billion, yet you're take $250 million from taxpayers in addition to the $2 billion you're putting in to the whole damn edifice area downtown. With the centerpiece being the new arena, of course. So, please, if you're worried about, if the loss of luxury tax and whatnot, just look at the numbers. Show me what you're paying, what you're spending on other shit in the city, and then get back at me with that. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, totally fucking ridiculous. So, I think we cleared everything. Now it's time for 5 questions. Are you ready, Ed Smith?
Ready as ever, retailers. Just let them rip.
It's time for 5 questions on the Michigan Sports Truth on Spreaker.
Question number 1. Is Lions wide receiver Golden Tate back to his great self again?
It looks like it's hard to tell because, again, 2 games provide such a short sample size, small sample size, I should say. But the way he's moving, the way he's been getting involved in plays, and the way Jim Bakuda's trying to get him involved with plays out of the backfield and whatnot, I'll say short term, yes, but long term, I don't know. But short term, yes, he is. Because he's showing, like I said, the yards after catch tendencies that he's known for. He's looking energetic again. He's connecting with his quarterback again. So for the very brief minimum, I would say yes. Long term, still the question. He's still got another whole rest of the season to get through.
Next question.
Question number 2. Which quarterback do the Spartans turn to at Maryland this upcoming Saturday? Tyler O'Connor or Brian Lewerke?
If they had the option of C, neither, I would choose that because I would actually recommend try to give Damian Terry a shot. Because again,
there's option C.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's option C right there.
I'm taking it because I think O'Connor's a lost cause. Lewerke didn't quite impress me. And in fact, he wasn't impressive because he got benched midway through the game. So. Who else can you trust? I'd say your season's practically almost essentially over now. What do you got left to lose? Just go in Terry, see what the hell happens. The guy's athletic. He has much more better capability in terms of athleticism than Tyler Lewerke or O'Connor. Using his legs, get out of trouble. Just coach him up the right spots, put him in good plays, play calls where he doesn't try to go into hero mode by throwing deep balls. That's why he got picked off a couple weeks ago against BYU. See what happens. But to be quite honest, I would rather trust Damian Terry than I would Tyler O'Connor or even Brian Lewerke for that matter.
Next question.
Question number 3. Is the signing of Steve Ott even worth the Red Wings payroll? I don't think so.
No, not really. I mean, again, it's not too much of a hit you're taking. He's only, going to be an $800,000 hit. So it's in terms of long-term cap space, it's not a big deal. But in terms of what you could be doing, projecting for your team, instead of signing him, you could have used that on guys like Timus and the Fricks, and bring them up, and the Manthas, bringing them up, let them earn their spots, instead of wasting it on unproductive guys like Ott. You could have done a whole lot better. So. In terms of projecting the overall message or image onto your team, no, it's not. I don't care if you got him at a cheap price. It's just not worth it at all.
I definitely agree. Speaking of which,
Next question.
question number 4: If Ott still doesn't perform up to expectations throughout the entire season, should Anthony Mantha be called up at some point?
I thought he should have been called off in the off season before the year even began, even before this whole signing from Ott. So, yes, especially what we saw tonight. For God's sake, the man had a hat trick. You know, and if he keeps not just how if Ott doesn't still perform to expectations, but also let's take consideration the fact that Mantha keeps putting up similar performances like this, where he's at right now. Obviously, he should, but who knows if he will. But he should get the call up sooner rather than later.
I definitely agree. There's still a chance, and there's always a chance.
Next question.
I think he's going to get some play time this year, no question.
Yep. Finally, question number 5: Are the Tigers going to keep Cameron Maben?
I say yes, they'll pick up the option, but I wouldn't be surprised if they'll at least have him at the start of the year. But I wouldn't be surprised if they used him as bait near the deadline. So for now, at least, I say yes, but I doubt he'll still be with Detroit by the time 2018 rolls around.
I think that's fair.
Especially now with the latest doom report that we got from Avila, which, by the way, came from orders from Chris Ilitch. I'll just say that. I know not many people else will say it. I will. Read between the lines, people.
Yep. So for all the listeners and fans out there, if you want to answer those questions, just replay the episode and answer them in the comment bank below this episode. I copied and pasted those 5 questions on the episode in the comment bank. That wraps up episode 233 of the Michigan Sports Truth. Ed, thanks so much again for your help. I'll talk to you again on episode 234 on Thursday when we preview Lions, Wolverines, Spartans, and Chippewas.
Looking forward to it, Taylor. At least I'll be anticipating something good happening for me this weekend with Michigan getting back after the bye.
Yeah, I'm sure the Wolverines will roll. So I'll talk to you then. And before we sign off, I want to remind everyone to share this podcast and this episode and our entire podcast on social media. Have their friends share that as well. And follow me on Spreaker as Taylor Phillips, online at Spreaker.com, because I want to tell them that the Michigan Sports Truth podcast here on Spreaker is in search of local advertising sponsors. If anyone has a business that's interested in sponsoring this program, please email me at taylorgatorphillips14@yahoo.com or privately message me on Facebook or Twitter. You can also follow Sports Radio Detroit on Twitter at Sports Radio DET and like their Facebook page and join their Facebook group. Also find their podcasts available on iTunes and Podbean. For Ed Smith, I'm Taylor Phillips. If there's anything you fans want more of or less of on our podcast, please let us know. Follow us on Twitter at DT2Phillips with 2 L's and at EdSmith313. Also like our Facebook page, The Michigan Sports Truth on Spreaker, and join our group on Facebook with the same exact name. TTFN, ta-ta for now.
Bon appétit.